The very first mobile phones in the 1980s didn't even have what we'd call an operating system. Instead, they ran on proprietary firmware, simple built-in code that lets you make calls, store a few numbers, and maybe send a text. That's it. One of the most famous examples was the Motorola Dynatac 8000X, released in 1983. This giant brick phone weighed nearly 2 pounds and cost almost $4,000, the price of a used car back then. But despite its size and cost, it became a cultural icon. In the 1987 movie Wall Street, Gordon Gekko, played by Michael Douglas, is seen walking on the beach with a Dynatac in hand, a symbol of power and wealth. Other celebrities, from Hollywood stars to Wall Street bankers, proudly carried them as status symbols. Brands like Motorola, Nokia, and Ericsson dominated this early era. Each phone had its own unique software, built from scratch for that device only. There were no apps, no downloads, and no app stores. These early proprietary systems weren't smart at all, but they paved the way for the real smartphone operating systems that would come later. The first true smartphone operating system was Symbian, created in 1998 by Nokia, Ericsson, and Motorola. And by the early 2000s, Symbian ruled the mobile world. If you had a phone back then, chances are it was a Nokia running Symbian. From the classic Nokia 3310 with its unbreakable body and the legendary game Snake, to the high-end Nokia communicator series used by business executives, Symbian was everywhere. By 2006, over half of all smartphones in the world ran Symbian. It was so iconic that James Bond himself used a Nokia 7650 in Die Another Day, but as the smartphone revolution arrived, Symbian began to show its age. It was designed for buttons and keypads, not the smooth, glassy touchscreens that Apple and Android were perfecting. While iPhones and Android devices gave users fluid, app-driven experiences, Symbian felt clunky, slow, and outdated. In the early 2000s, when the world was still tapping away on Nokia and flip phones, one device stood apart: the BlackBerry. With its iconic physical keyboard, secure email, and BBM messaging, BlackBerry OS became the favorite of CEO, politicians, and governments. In fact, U.S. President Barack Obama famously carried a BlackBerry during his time in office. BlackBerry was the definition of professional. If you had one, you were serious about business. The OS was fast, secure, and unmatched in messaging. But then came the touchscreen revolution. iPhone and Android changed how people interacted with their phones. Apps, touchscreens, and media consumption became the future. BlackBerry, tied to its keyboard identity, was slow to adapt. By the mid-2000s, BlackBerry OS collapsed. What was once a symbol of power became a relic of the past. While Nokia was conquering the world with Symbian, another pioneer was taking shape in Silicon Valley: Palm OS. Launched in 1996, Palm OS first appeared on Personal Digital Assistants, or PDA, before evolving into smartphones. These devices were the choice of professionals and tech enthusiasts. With a stylus in hand, you could tap through calendars, contacts, notes, and even install simple third-party apps. For many, the Palm Pilot was the first taste of a digital pocket assistant. In 2009, Palm tried to reinvent itself with WebOS, a sleek and modern platform. It introduced swipe-based gestures for multitasking, the very same ideas that Apple and Android would later adopt and refine. Critics loved its design, calling it ahead of its time, but Palm didn't have the financial muscle or ecosystem to compete with Apple's iPhone or Google's Android army. Palm phones faded into history, but WebOS never truly died. Today, it lives on in a very different form, powering LG smart TVs, quietly reminding us of a bold experiment that helped shape the way we interact with screens. Microsoft saw the smartphone boom and decided it wanted in. In 2010, they launched Windows Phone, a bold reimagining of mobile. Unlike iOS and Android, Windows Phone introduced the Live Tiles interface, colorful squares that updated in real time with messages, weather, and news. It was clean, modern, and ahead of its time. For a moment, it seemed like a real challenger, but the app gap killed it. Developers didn't flock to Windows Phone. and users found themselves missing popular apps. Even though the OS was smooth, reliable, and stylish, it couldn't survive without apps. In 2017, Microsoft officially ended support. Windows Phone, like BlackBerry, became another casualty in the smartphone wars. In January 2007, Steve Jobs walked onto the stage at Macworld and held up a device that would redefine technology, the iPhone. It had no physical keyboard, no stylus, no tiny buttons, just a sleek, multi-touch screen that you controlled with your fingers. When the App Store launched a year later, it turned the iPhone into more than a phone. It became a platform, one that could play games, book flights, order food, and connect the world in ways no one had imagined. But Apple wasn't alone. In 2008, Google unveiled Android, an open-source alternative designed for everyone else. Unlike iOS, Android could run on almost any brand's phone, from Samsung and HTC to Motorola, Sony, Huawei, and beyond. This flexibility, paired with Google's services, made Android explode in popularity. Samsung's Galaxy series in particular pushed Android into the hands of millions, rivaling Apple step for step. Together, iOS and Android crushed the competition. Symbian, BlackBerry, Palm, and Windows Phone all fell in their shadow. And today, these two operating systems control more than 99% of the global smartphone market. As iOS and Android rose to dominance, a wave of challengers appeared, each trying to find a different path forward. In 2010, Nokia and Intel teamed up to create MeeGo, a slick Linux-based OS with a futuristic design. Phones like the Nokia N9 earned praise for their smooth swipe gestures and elegant interface. But MeeGo was short-lived, abandoned almost as quickly as it appeared. Meanwhile, Samsung was experimenting too. They launched Bada OS, powering phones like the Samsung Wave. But with Android already taking off, Bada couldn't keep up. Samsung eventually merged it into Tizen, an operating system that found a second life in smartwatches, TVs, and even refrigerators. Then came Mozilla's Firefox OS. It was bold, betting entirely on web apps instead of native apps. The idea was simple. If a web page could do it, so could your phone. Cheap handsets shipped with Firefox OS, especially in developing countries. But without strong developer and carrier support, it shut down in 2016. And then there was Ubuntu Touch, a dream of having one system for both your PC and your phone. Dock your phone, and it would transform into a desktop computer. It was visionary but too ambitious for its time. In 2013, Finnish startup Jolla rose from the ashes of MeeGo and launched Sailfish OS. It was sleek, gesture-based, and proudly independent, focusing on privacy and security at a time when iOS and Android were accused of tracking everything. Sailfish never became mainstream, but it found a unique role, used in government and corporate phones across Russia and parts of Europe, where independence from American tech was seen as vital. Meanwhile, in a completely different corner of the market, KaiOS was making a surprising comeback story. Instead of chasing high-end smartphones, KaiOS revived the old-school feature phone, cheap, durable handsets with long battery life, but with a modern twist, apps like WhatsApp, YouTube, Facebook, and Google Maps built right in. For millions of people in India and Africa, this was their very first step into the internet era. Today, KaiOS is the second most popular mobile operating system in those regions. In 2019, the global smartphone story took a dramatic turn. After U.S. sanctions cut Huawei off from Google's Android services, the company faced a crisis. Most brands would have collapsed, but Huawei answered with its own creation. Harmony OS wasn't just another smartphone platform. It was designed as a universal operating system, connecting not only phones and tablets, but also watches, TVs, laptops, and even smart home devices. In China, Harmony OS quickly took off, shipping on millions of Huawei devices and gaining support from local developers. Its adoption signaled more than just a technical shift. It became a symbol of technological independence in the face of global pressure.